This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsa Hone, and today is Friday, and that means it's time for the 583rd MTG Top 10. In this series, I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition, and today we're going to take a look at green removal, and in particular, green creature removal. In Magic, a removal spell is a card that helps you get rid of an opposing permanent of a particular type, and obviously creature removal is something that lets you remove a creature. For a long time, green got basically no creature removal, but over the last decade or so, they've started consistently giving green removal, mostly in the form of fight or bite effects. A fight effect lets your creature do damage equal to its power to an opposing creature, and that creature also damages your creature. And a bite effect is more one-sided. It lets one of your creatures do damage equal to its power to an opposing creature. We see at least a few green cards with this type of effect in just about every set these days. This is a flavorful way to give green removal, since green is the color that is the most interested in having big creatures, and these types of removal spells work well with those. But it is also worse than most other forms of removal, since it requires you to have a creature in play to do anything, and if your opponent can interact in response or your creature just isn't big enough, you're really out of luck. And overall, green is still short on creature removal when compared to other colors, so I think it's particularly interesting to take a look at how these types of cards have been doing. To be eligible for this list, a card had to have a mono-green identity, and it had to be able to remove a creature in some way. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, this includes events like Pro Tours, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point, this includes regional championships. Alright, let's dive into the list. At number 10, it is Primal Might. This sorcery costs X and a green and gives one of your creatures +X/+X, and then your creature fights one of your opponent's creatures. The stats boost makes it pretty hard for your creature to lose the fight, and it also means that if your opponent is defenseless after this resolves, you can send in a massive creature for a big hit on the opponent. In Standard, it saw a lot of play in green aggro decks, where casting it could often end the game. It has also seen some play in Pioneer Devotion to green decks, which can use Nykthos to make the creature absolutely massive. So far in 2023, Primal Might doesn't have any points, but that could change in the near future. At number 9, it is Ram Through. This instant costs 1 generic and a green, and it is a bite effect. In other words, your creature deals damage equal to its power to a creature you don't control. This adds an interesting angle to that, though. If your creature has trample, it basically gets to trample when it fights, because any excess damage dealt to your opponent's creature gets dealt to them. Ram Through was played in mono-green aggro decks in both Standard and Pioneer. These decks featured no shortage of trampled, so getting in for extra damage with Ram Through was pretty great. It felt a lot like having a green burn spell. It also sees play in Pauper Bogle's decks, a deck that specializes in slapping a bunch of auras on a hexproof creature, like Slippery Bogle, and there are several cards that grant trample in the deck, like Rancor. Additionally, the fact your creatures have hexproof means your opponent can't blow you out in response to casting this spell, since your creature can't be targeted. It's going to keep gaining points in Pauper going forward. At number 8, it is Crawl Harpooner. In addition to getting the more recently introduced bite and fight effects, green has also always been good at killing flyers, and the Harpooner combines the ability to hate on flyers with a fight effect. This 2-mana 3/2 comes with reach and the ability to fight a flyer when it enters the battlefield. It also raises its power for a turn based on how many creature cards are in your graveyard. It's particularly nice when it kills a 1-power flyer, because it gets to remove a creature and remain on the table. A decent chunk of the time, it's basically just a 2-mana 3/2 with reach, but that additional upside is far from irrelevant. The Harpooner has put up top 8s in Standard, Pioneer, and Historic in a pretty wide variety of mid-range and aggro decks. So far in 2023, it doesn't have any points, but I don't think we can count it out entirely just yet. It has efficient-based stats and nice upside. At number 7, it is Arbor Colossus. It has the same total score as the Harpooner, but more Pro Tour top 8, so I put it higher up on the list. This is another creature that can remove flyers. It's sort of like a really big Crawl Harpooner, because it brings an impressive 5-mana 6/6 reach body to the table, and has a powerful ability that allows it to kill flyers while also getting larger. He saw both main deck and sideboard play while in Standard, where he was pretty well positioned as a result of there being some powerful, heavily played flyers in the format like Stormbreath Dragon. The Colossus was mostly played in green Devotion decks, where it could be quickly ramped into, in addition to the fact that it had 3 green mana symbols in its cost, which would give you some more devotion. The Colossus rotated out of Standard in 2015, and hasn't gained a single point anywhere since then, so it may not be on this list much longer. At number 6, it is Vivian Reed. This is Vivian's debut Planeswalker. She's a 5 mana, 5 loyalty Planeswalker, and she makes it on the list thanks to her -3, which allows her to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. So, like Arbor Colossus and the Harpooner, her creature removal is restricted to flyers. Her ability to destroy flyers is actually quite nice to have on a Planeswalker, because flyers can often really effectively attack them. She also has a +1 that lets you grab a land or a creature from your top 4, and she has an ultimate that gives you an emblem that gives +2/+2 Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible to your whole board. Obviously, that +1 is great at digging you deeper in your deck, and the ultimate will usually win you the game immediately. In Standard, she was played in a wide variety of decks, including in aggro decks as top curve that could find you more gas, as well as in mid-range and control decks where she could help grind you out a win. She's also played in Pioneer, where she's seen play in multiple very different decks such as Green Devotion, Sultai Delirium, and Selesnya Angels. She's well positioned to gain more points in Pioneer going forward. At number 5, it is Blizzard Brawl. This 1 mana snow sorcery makes one of your creatures fight an opposing creature, and if you have 3 or more snow permanents in play, that creature gets +1/+0 and indestructible until end of turn. That's obviously a huge upgrade. The best fight and bite spells enhance your creature so that a wider variety of creatures can successfully remove and survive fighting an opposing creature. +1/+0 and indestructible goes a long way towards making sure your creature wins that fight, and it also makes your creature able to attack effectively on virtually any board. The Brawl was a central card in mono-green aggro decks while it was in Standard, and along with Faceless Haven, it was the main reason those decks went deep on snow permanents. In that deck, this card felt pretty close to just being a green Swords to Plowshares. It's no longer in Standard, and so far it hasn't found a home in other formats. However, I do think it has potential to see play in formats like Pioneer and Historic in the future. At number 4, it is Voracious Hydra. This creature costs 2 green and X generic mana, and it's a 0/1 with Trample, but it enters with X +1/+1 counters on it, and you get one of 2 options when it enters the battlefield. It either doubles those +1/+1 counters, or it fights another creature. While it was in Standard, it saw play in Simic Food, Simic Ramp, and Simic Control decks, as well as mono-green aggro. It's also found a ton of success in Pioneer Devotion to Green decks, which look to produce tons of mana with Nykthos. The Hydra is a nice place to spend that mana, and it also helps you produce more mana, because it adds 2 to your Devotion to Green. It's going to keep seeing play in Pioneer in the future. At number 3, it is Polucranos, World Eater. This creature starts with nice stats as a 4 mana 5/5, but it is its monstrosity effect that qualifies it as green removal. You can pay XX and a green to put X +1/+1 counters on Polucranos, and then it does X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures the opponent controls. Those creatures also damage Polucranos, so it's sort of a more complex fight effect, one that allows one creature to fight multiple creatures. Because you get to put counters on him, and because you choose what he damages, you can usually set it up so he wrecks your opponent's board but manages to survive. Basically, Polucranos is an above-rate creature that can function as removal, and that makes him quite powerful. In Block, Standard, and Pioneer, Polucranos has been played in Nykthos decks, like some of the other cards on the list. He's also likely to gain more points in Pioneer in the future. At number 2, it is Beast Within. Certainly the most flexible green removal spell on the list, Beast Within costs 2 generic and a green to destroy any permanent. In exchange, the controller of that permanent gets a 3/3 Beast token. One kind of cool thing about that is you can use it to destroy one of your permanents in a pinch if you're desperate for a 3/3, though using it to destroy opposing permanents, including lands, comes up a lot more often. It's a really nice tool for non-aggressive green decks in multiple formats. In Standard and Modern, it's done the most work in Primeval Titan decks. In general, combo decks like it in Modern since they are interested in the flexibility it can offer, and they aren't too worried about the opponent getting a 3/3 since they intend on winning before that creature matters. In Modern, it's been played in Scapeshift, Living End, and Amulet Titan, but it can be particularly nasty in Living End, since you can use it to disrupt an opposing mana base or destroy a problem permanent, and then when you cast Living End, you don't have to worry about the token, because it gets destroyed. It's also done some work in Red-Green Ponza, which likes to blow up opposing lands, and it even sees a bit of play in Vintage. It is definitely going to keep gaining points, and in the near future, it's probably going to be the number 1 card on this list. For now, though, that number 1 card is Wicked Wolf. This 4-mana 3/3 creature fights another creature when it enters the battlefield, and you can also sacrifice food to it for it to gain a +1/+1 counter and indestructible until end of turn. Like we saw with Blizzard Brawl, indestructibility and a stats boost really makes a fight hugely effective, and that's certainly the case here. In this case, you even get a big body that hangs around on the board that is also going to be very difficult for your opponent to remove if you have food around. In Standard, he was played in food-heavy, aggro, and control decks. One of the biggest enablers for that deck was Oko Thief of Crowns. This absurd planeswalker of course got quickly banned, but Wicked Wolf found a new home in the aftermath of that ban, in particular in sacrifice decks in Standard. These decks seek to take advantage of sacrificing things with cards like Mayhem Devil, and the ability of the wolf to sacrifice food for no cost can result in huge amounts of damage. He's also seen play in historic sacrifice decks as well as Pioneer Simic aggro. However, the wolf hasn't gained any points since 2021, and Beast Within isn't very far from passing it, so it probably won't be the #1 card on this list for much longer. So those are the 10 green removal spells that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you're interested in killing your opponent's creatures when you're playing green, check out the description where you can find a direct Card Kingdom link for each card that appeared in the video. If you want to catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to catch up on past MTG Top 10s, you should see the playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.